Herzlich willkommen, liebe Zuschauer bei CTVAu. Heute haben wir eine Premiere. Wir haben einen Fan zu Gast. Also der erste Fan, der in unserer Sendung hier ein Interview mit mir macht und auch ein bisschen erzählt. Er ist eigentlich eine Ikone, ein Langzeitfan, so ähnlich wie die Doris, wie der Franzi, die wir alle kennen. Herzlich willkommen. Hello, welcome to Ian or Preston, how they call him out there in the fan lobby, in the fan stadium.
Hi, hi Andy. Guten Abend, guten Tag, Vikings-Fans. Hello, thank you.
Also er hat auch schon ein paar deutsche Worte für uns parat. Wir werden das Interview aber in Englisch machen. So we switch to English right now. Ian, can you tell our viewers short, how did you come, or did you come to American football? Because we talked in Düsseldorf. I know a little bit about your story, but we should repeat it for our viewers as well. Just a brief case you can make and let us know what brought you to the special formed ball.
Yeah, so we have to go back many years. I'll keep it very brief, but I was one of those soccer fans growing up in the 1980s and just very disappointed when, your team was always having to sell its best players and you realized you had no chance to win the league. So when I heard about the NFL and this system about, the worst team getting the best players, I really got into American football. That this idea of the league was only as good as the weakest teams. So I'd go and watch our local team play, which was called the Manchester Spartans, who used to have some success many years ago in European competitions. And one of the first games I saw was Manchester Spartans against Amsterdam Crusaders, and the Crusaders are still a team that plays, and it was just an incredible game. And I just fell in love with the idea of these teams playing from different countries and coming together, to make a great competition.
So you really had some kind of let's say, you were satisfied with the modus, how they playing against different teams in different countries. It's more a connecting reason. It's also a sporty reason, but it's also a connecting reason because people got connected at those times, which was very, for you, comfortable.
Yeah, so I guess then it started into the 1990s with the World League of American Football. So it started with the London Monarchs, Frankfurt Galaxy, Barcelona Dragons, and they were playing teams from America. So there wasn't so much of a fan scene in terms of meeting fans from different teams, but that was an interesting league. But of course, it only lasted 2 years in that format. And then it came back in 1995, only teams in Europe. So then we had Rhein Fire, Amsterdam Admirals, and 6 teams based in Europe. And at this point, then we started coming over to Düsseldorf, to Frankfurt, to Amsterdam, going to Barcelona and meeting these other fans. And that became a really kind of special thing because, so much of the, sport between the different countries, especially from soccer, was not always good, was not always positive in the 1980s, 1990s. And suddenly now we were having this fans are friends situation with the teams from NFL Europe. So this was really exciting, but of course this league was not going to last either.
So let's have a few words about the Claymores, because this is the team I really know from former time. I know the other teams like London and also when the World League started, but I really got into European professional football with the Claymores, with Galaxy, with Berlin Thunder and all the teams. But before I wasn't so firm and familiar with the teams and the league as well, which was called World League. And now it started with the NFL Europe.
Yeah,
for me.
Yeah. So the Claymores came around in 1995 when the league was relaunched. And I mean, this time I was living in London, so I was already a London Monarchs fan, but I was born in Scotland and spent many years in Scotland. So it was a little bit confusing at first for me, but, I wanted both teams to do well. But eventually I started meeting Claymores fans and they were telling me, look, come on, you're from Scotland. You have to pick a team. So at this point, I had to choose the Claymores. Then, of course, it made it quite complicated for me as a fan because then every weekend I had to travel. So we either had to go up to Edinburgh when the game started in Edinburgh or go to Europe for the games in Europe. So the Claymores was unlike maybe some of the other teams, they were trying to be a team from Scotland. So they started in Edinburgh, but eventually moved into to Glasgow. And I think just because of the at this time you think about the Braveheart movie, there was all the German fans always connected, and Austrian fans as well, always connected with the sort of the icons of Scotland. The Mel Gibson. Braveheart movie at this time. So you had this, it was a very popular team, but of course it was not particularly successful. But it's so hard to put it into, try to put in context. And maybe they were getting 10,000 fans at the stadium, but this was great for Scotland because it's not really had a history of many other sports outside of, the soccer, the Rangers, Celtic, that would get these large crowds. But eventually for the NFL, this isn't enough people. They were the American owners, they thought they could get more people inside the stadium. So it was difficult. It was always going to be a hard sell, American football in Scotland. But of course, we were always a popular team with fans in Germany and Austria.
So in the beginning of the last set of your statement, you said you had to travel and you had to move to other towns. But as far as I know, you do that now as well, and you even have greater distances. You're in the neighborhood of London at home.
Yes.
And so I think you leave on Thursday for Barcelona.
Yes.
We met 3 weeks ago in Düsseldorf and in Cologne. So do you really travel every weekend to every game you want to see, or do you have even let's say an intermission?
Yeah, so when we had the Claymores, then for maybe about 5 seasons, we were traveling to every game. So it was a 10-game season. So it meant for 10 weekends, you were always traveling, and then the final. So it's different now with the ELF. We don't really have a team at the moment. I mean, perhaps London will get a team in the next 1 or 2 years, and that will complicate matters. I don't think Scotland will get a team. Maybe you'll ask me that later. But at the moment, because the first year of the ELF, all the COVID restrictions, we were just watching on TV, and we were thinking we'd really like to go back, and especially if Rhine Fire come back. So last year we were back at Rhine Fire, and that same feeling that we had at NFL Europe was starting to come back, because really when NFL Europe started, it was 6 teams. But there was such a positive, everybody thought this was the beginning of something. We've got teams in Germany, we've got team in Netherlands, in Spain, in Scotland, and we thought, okay, maybe next year they will expand. Maybe there'll be new teams in Paris or Milan, and this was always our hope. But of course, it went in the opposite direction. The NFL owners said, no, we don't want to spend this money. In fact, we need all the teams in Germany or the Netherlands, and to keep them close together for traveling. So that feeling, that hope that we always had to see teams, a team in Austria, to see a team in Austria, it never happened. So it was almost like the ELF was what we hoped the old World League and NFL Europe could have become. So thinking now, sitting at home during COVID, and then COVID had passed and we're free to travel, I'm thinking, well, I can finally go to these cities that I never got to see, these games in. So you're right. We met 3 weeks ago in Duisburg and Cologne. So they were nice and easy. But then the following week, let's see. So we were, I got all my merchandise. So we were in Milano.
Oh, Milano. Okay.
Milano for the Dragons game. Then we got this.
The guards from Helvetic.
Guards from Wiel in Switzerland. So this was great fun. Going to these games, their first game. So, but last weekend I was at home, so it was a rest week for me. And now we're in Barcelona, as you say. We start the journey tomorrow. Because we always.
Are you going by train? Are you going by car or by train?
No, train. So that's the other really a little bit crazy thing, is that I decided I didn't want to fly anymore a few years ago. So every journey I have to make by train. So
why don't you want to fly?
I think just because of environmental reasons, really, it's the main thing. And I kind of like the challenge of, of trying to make all the travel connections. So people think I'm crazy, you know.
No, absolutely not. Because if you say there are environmental reasons, I would also say yes. I won't do that by plane. The only thing is that I think it takes so much time to go by train, even by car, because the train might be a little bit faster than the car ride. And, when we met in Düsseldorf or in Duisburg 3 weeks ago, we had a more than 10 hours car ride in our backs, you know, on my head and on my back. So it's really the English word is it's a really exhausting thing to sit for 10 hours. Okay, you make intermissions and you go to a gas station and have a break and something to eat, have a coffee. But for me, it's really a hard challenge to sit 10 hours or even more in a car. So the ride on a train, that can I say, is much more comfortable than a ride in the car.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, you can
the
get
next
up
thing
and
is
walk
that the
around.
train is so much in Austria, so much costs so much more money than a flight. If I book a flight to and back to London, I pay about 200 euros. I don't know pounds, how much in pounds, but so I say 200 euros to and back to London. I will do that in November maybe. And this is also a matter of a budget you have in your pocket.
Yeah. So I mean, because they announced the schedule very early, I think in January, I was able to, you know, plan ahead and but you're right, you know, if you tried to make those journeys in the next few weeks, they would be very expensive. But I have some really you know, good prices, cheap tickets. So I think, but you're right, it takes time. So when I come to Vienna for the Raiders game, I'm taking the night train from Brussels. So I take the train from London to Brussels in the evening, and then in Brussels connect. Then I'll be in Vienna the next morning. And the night train is not cheap, but you know, it's your hotel for the night. So
so you don't need it. You have one night on wheels, if I can say so. And the next 2 or 3 nights you have a hotel and you go back also on wheels. Okay. So it's the thing is, what you can tell to the fans out there, if you plan early and you plan, how can I say that in English? And if you plan very sorgfältig. So what is sorgfältig?
You say you plan ahead. It's just, you know, but we always had this the same thing with NFL Europe. As soon as the schedule came out, we knew we're going to be in these places on these weekends. Let's book the flights, and we would do this and always get the best price. Yeah, it's that's the way it works. We try to keep your travel costs down. So
and that's a good information and a good advice for all the people out there, because everyone has his own arguments. Who say I can do that, I can do that not. I won't go by plane, I won't go by car. So everyone has a no and a yes. And if they listen to you, they can learn a lot.
But believe me, to understand the train pricing system, I think you need to be a PhD, because the train I just was booking a train from Innsbruck to Ville for a game later in the season, and depending on where you make the journey, the price can be so bit. It's just it makes no sense, but there are ways that you can make the journey cheaper. It's crazy.
So the one is the budget, the one is the planning, the one going in front. The next one, you're fascinated by American football.
Yes.
And the next question is, what is for me is, if I go out, I'm not so much on the road like you, but what I really like is to meet people who love football. Okay, I do that maybe every 4 weeks, every 5 weeks. I have not the off interval like you, but what is it what you like about meeting people who love to watch American football? And you know a lot of people even like we know every Franz and Torres, for
Yes.
example. And so what is it what you like, and what mixed it with you?
Yeah, so I think so in terms of the people that you meet, it's just a wide range of people. So it's young people, it's old people, it's not just men, it's women, there's lots. So it's just a mix of all sorts of people, and it's always been that way. So early on in the sport, you always found that there was just a different mix of people. Um, but in terms of the game itself, I mean, I just find it a very fascinating and interesting game to watch. It's there's a lot of you have 3 hours. Maybe that was long for some people, but I think it's just about the right time to have for a sporting game, and it takes place. The understanding the plays and the tactics and the coaching. I just find it a fascinating game to watch. It can be complicated, but people do pick it up quite quickly. And yeah, I we can certainly talk more about the sort of the game itself, but I do find it can be an interesting game. And yes, it's difficult because sometimes better teams can dominate, but there's always a way back. You can, you can, as you say, it's not like we have other sports where when you fall behind or one team scores more goals or has more points, it's difficult to come back. But with American football, there's always a way back. You can throw the ball, you can get quick touchdowns, you can use the clock. So there's so much interesting parts of the game that are easy to watch. And so having this league is and also it's just great to see the homegrown players, because if we talk about NFL Europe again, one of the disappointing aspects was that it didn't really focus enough on our great athletes that we have in Europe. So we were having American players sent over by the NFL saying, this is your player, this is your player. But of course, with the ELF now, we've got our own players with a few Americans to help, obviously a quarterback and etc. So it's great seeing all these players from the different countries around Europe getting a chance to really compete at the highest level. And obviously it's great to see the Vienna Vikings as part of that, because it didn't feel the same that first season. And obviously last year it was great seeing you all in Klagenfurt and winning the championship. So it was still, that was a nice time.
Oh, I have that as well over there in my shelf,
Yeah.
but I have to open. would have to stand up, but I have it also here, and it's always on. I have it inside every time when I'm sitting here on my table. I interrupted you. Just go on.
Oh no, it's fine. No, please.
Okay.
I think I'd said what I was going
So
to say.
what I have in my mind is that you are going to, let's say, you know a lot about football. Is there anything what you want to do, what you never have done before, within your life as a fan? So what have you missed until now, until today? What do you say? That's the one thing I want to do. So for me, I have some let's say unreal dreams to be on the sideline and to be in a team and having the chain gang or something like that, the chain crew, one of the
Yes.
chain crew, being one of the chain crew.
Mm.
I tried to be a referee. I really
Yes.
did that from a few years ago, which is called the Zebra Bowl because of the
Yes.
zebra-like jerseys they had. And I tried to do that, and it was really hard because we got a short lesson, what we can do, what we have to do. And I know some of the rules, but not all. But I never would do that again.
Mm.
So what is it, what you say, I've never done this before, I would like to do it?
Something I've never done before that I'd like to do. You know, just even thinking a little bit back from that. I mean, in some ways, before the ELF came along, I really felt I had done everything I wanted to do. I was very lucky that I'd gone to America many times. I'd seen NFL games. I mean, I got to a Super Bowl, um, which was really lucky because that's so expensive to buy tickets for the Super Bowl. So, So I really felt I'd accomplished all the things that I wanted to see. So when the ELF came back, it almost felt like a second chance, a second life. So, really, I mean, the goal I would want to see is just this league to continue to survive, because I think it's a startup league. It's going to be a bumpy ride. Not every team is going to survive. We know that. So I want to be there in 5-10 years time, when there are, I know they keep talking about 24 teams, but just so that we're not having to worry about will it come back next year. It would be great just to know that it is established, and and it becomes actually sort of a dominant force in Europe. So yeah, I mean, would it be great to have a team back in Scotland? Well, of course. I mean, so I mean, maybe that's the goal, to be there for the to flip the coin for the first game back for the Scottish Claymores in 2030. But I think this will be a hard dream, because they need the national players. I think that, of course they can have players from around the UK, but I don't know if there will be enough support for it. I think London is a possibility, but it'd be hard to see Scotland. But who knows? I mean, let's always dream. And of course, I should shout out to the fact that the Vikings have the only Scottish player, I think, in ELF. Is that correct? Do you know?
Daltrey, I think it is.
Daltrey, yeah, Matthew Daltrey. So, so maybe that's why the Vikings have to be my team. So yeah, I got my Vikings hat still from
cool.
from Klagenfurt as well. So yeah, I don't, as I say, my real, all I want to do is to see this league, because this is really the best chance. The league is not perfect, but having people like the Vikings organization, and of course the Raiders, Tyrol, deciding to join the league was a big vote of confidence, I think. And yeah, I think we just got to make it work, and it's difficult because it's never going to be easy. And when you're asking in London, we have a lot of people that are just used to the NFL experience. So when you try to tell them to come to these games, they don't really understand why you would want to go and stand in front of 1,000 people in outside of Zurich watching American football. But for me, that's just as exciting as going to a game in London. It's all about seeing the competition on the field. I mean, these guys, these players, I mean, they have real jobs. They are, they're not playing, they don't have a big paycheck. So they really are, if you're interested in just pure competition of the sport, they are really trying 100%. And I love it. So yeah, I don't know if I've really answered your question there about something else to do.
You did. What I can say is there are rumors on the internet, even on some platforms, which say that the NFL is thinking about playing one conference with 4 teams in Europe, maybe especially in Great Britain or in England. And there are a few teams which always come back to England, like the Jaguars, I think, and
Yes.
I think the Colts. I don't know which 4 teams they are going to. They might play this conference in England and in Europe. So what have you heard about it, and what would it interesting for you that the National Football League is going to outsource one of the conferences?
I mean, I have to say my interest in the NFL has really started to dip. I mean,
okay.
I almost feel that the paths have diverged for me a little bit, in that I'm not so, they play the games in London, but I don't often go to London because, as I say, I've been lucky in being to America and seen NFL games. So I'm not all. So I think the commissioner, and what the NFL does very good, is that they always talk about something in the future as a, how we have an expression with the donkey and the carrot. Do you know this, where you're always just trying to lead them on?
Is this kind of a stick with the
Yes,
Yeah,
to
yeah, I
stick
know.
with it.
Yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah.
So I think Roger Goodell does a very good job with this. I mean, even when they played the first game in London, 16 years ago, they were talking, oh, London franchise, London franchise. So they keep. So maybe this idea of this conference is part of the same idea to get the people in Germany also thinking, oh, could it be? But it's difficult because when you think about the logistics of it, if these teams are going to be based in Germany or based in London, I mean, is it easy for them to sign free agents? Will the players want to move their families all the way out here?
Uh-huh.
Uh, are they going to be at a competitive disadvantage? So I think what the NFL has at the moment works for them. And of course, they've got this extra game, the 17th game, so they can always play these extra games. And that kind of just makes money easily for them. So I don't know why they would feel they need to do anything else, really.
Uh-huh.
It's there's 32 teams in the NFL, and it doesn't seem likely that they're going to add any more
Uh-huh.
teams at any time. So yeah, I mean, it it's fine, but it's not for me. I mean, at the London NFL games, you go to a game. I mean, have you been to the games in London?
2 times.
Yeah, so you see the fans of all the teams, and it's a different atmosphere. It's not, you're not really getting people passionate about their team on the field because most of the fans, it's not their team. I mean, there'll
Uh-huh.
be okay, you say the Jaguars do have a sort of connection, but yeah, as I say, that's not really for me. And as we said before, there's only so much money you can spend, and believe me, one ticket for London, you can buy many more tickets for ELF,
Uh-huh.
and pays for the
Okay.
train rides as well.
Mhm. Now, what I remember that I went to Twickenham 3 years ago.
Yes,
It was just a year before Corona came
yeah.
up, and I saw the Minnesota Vikings against the what
Is
was
it
it?
Cleveland or?
Yeah, Cleveland. It were the Browns. Yeah,
Mm,
and I really loved the stadium because
yes,
it's huge. It's about 80,000 people there.
yes.
And I was there with my wife, and my wife is not very interested in football, but she said this was an impressive afternoon,
Mm,
starting at 2 or 3 o'clock on Sunday, as far as I can remember. We went by train there. We walked about 50 minutes from the train station to Twickenham. All easy going, no
mm.
pushing, no riots, nothing. And around the stadium, they had these merchandising stands and
Mm,
food stands and even NFL stands. So it was really, I loved it. And
yes,
the first game I saw in 200 in 2017, Wembley. This was the Colts against the Jaguars.
right.
This was one of the last seasons which were who was the quarterback of the Colts who retired then?
Peyton
Yeah,
Manning
Peyton Manning. And
or Andrew Luck,
yeah,
probably.
and the thing is that my son and me, we both were fans of Peyton.
Mm,
And to see him play live in the
yes.
stadium, the Wembley Arena is the arena, stadium is not the
Mm,
arena. It's really an impressive location. So you go up with elevators,
mm,
so easy going. The same here. And a huge NFL merchandising area was there in London. And then
mm,
we had attended for about 150 pounds, I think, euros. We attended a pre-game party with
mm,
special grill, and there was a guy from the Chicago Bears who had a Super Bowl ring. He was a 30 years ago or something like that, and he was at the party and was talking
yes.
to all the people. And okay, we were happy. That's what I can
Yes.
say. And
Yes.
but what I'm really thinking about to go maybe in November, end of October, to see one game in London because I
Mm,
love London. The
yes.
problem is I love the town, and if something is in the town like a concert, it was 2 years ago I met this Iron Maiden, the last at the O2 Arena, and it was when 2018. So if something is happening in London, I take the event as a side event because
Mm,
I love London. I'm running around in London 3 or 4 days. having shops and eating and hanging around in Kensington Gardens. That's what I like to do. So it's not the same like you going to attend a game. And I tried to get tickets for the Munich game with the Buccaneers and with Brady. Impossible,
No chance.
But London tickets, I tried to get some for the first game on, I think it's the first weekend in October, even with the Jaguars. And I logged in on the NFL site on the ticket page and in the internet, and I could order a card and giving my credit number to the page assistant and put the numbers in. I didn't took the because I knew I didn't buy the ticket because I knew I had no time, but I wanted to know if it works, and it works. You can even 2 days ahead. I could buy a ticket later.
Yes, I mean that
so
happened.
It's not so difficult like it was 3 or 4 years ago.
No, they have a resale because the same last year. My wife, she was a Saints fan, so we found tickets for her. Like 3-4 days before the game last year, so really easy, and so she was able to go with her sister to the game.
That's cool.
Yeah, but no, I mean it's a great show what they put on in London, but I'm just lucky because I've been through, I've been to the NFL games in America, so it doesn't hold the same thrill for me. And as I say, I'd rather spend my money supporting ELF and buying all the t-shirts and merchandise from ELF. And because, really, if the fans don't support this league, it won't survive. And we need, and I mean, it's great seeing the attendance at the arena in Vienna last weekend. 6,000 people?
6,800 and a few.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's really great. I mean, that's what we need to see. And I think Innsbruck had a nice crowd as well. So we just need to grow. It will be slow, but we've got to make sure it continues to grow. And that's my wish.
We are going to be in the fourth quarter. It might be 2 minutes warning now.
Yeah.
We tried to, like the KISS, keep it short and simple. Now, if we take more than the 20 minutes, it's no problem.
We can go to overtime, can we?
The rules, I make the rules.
Yeah.
Okay. But what I want to know is, if we look a little bit on the ELF now, and you have seen a lot of game now, we have week 3 is over. So would you like to make a little prediction on which teams you expecting on the last 4?
Yes, that's a pretty good question because I'd already for the semi. So just to recap, so there's 6 teams that make the playoffs, but only 2 get the first round bye. So they will be the host cities for the semi-finals. So I'm going to the final in Duisburg, but I decided that I wanted to spend the whole week in Europe before. So I'm going to go to some semi-final games, but of course it's hard to know where those cities will be. So I'd put myself in Brussels on the Friday, and I'm thinking, okay, I will wait until we get further into the season to decide where the semi-finals will be. But I think after the last 2 weeks, for sure, there will be a semi-final in Duisburg because the way the schedule is set up, I mean, I think Rhein-Fire win their division, but the problem for Vienna and potentially the Raiders or Stuttgart Surge is that they have to, I mean, Raiders and Vikings have to play each other. So I think Fire are going to win, well, maybe all their games, but at least 11 games. So I don't see how they're not one of the top 2 teams to get a first round bye. So Fire will be one of them, and then the other, well, I mean, I would probably still say Vikings, and I think because Raiders and Surge, I think will be much closer. So I don't know who's going to win the division between those 2, but they will not get the first round bye. So I think we're looking at semi-finals in Vienna and Duisburg, and the other 2 playoff teams. Well, who knows? But I mean, this is the hard thing for the league, is obviously there is a disparity because you've got these great organizations like the Vikings and Raiders who have such strength and depth. So even when they have injuries, and the Vikings again have injured, I mean, they had many injuries last year, it didn't stop them, and again they have injuries this year. They're able to, to keep going, but other teams, struggle. And of course, these new teams, as you saw last week with Prague, it's going to take some time for those players to really get to the same level. Yeah, so I hope to see. Yeah, so I definitely, I think Duisburg and Vienna look like the two top teams.
I had, let me say, I have one team on my payroll, if I can say so, which I think might, let's say, blew up a little bit, and that's Barcelona. They are not as strong as last year, but I think they will consolidate their play, and they will get better in the next weeks. They started very, let's say, a little bit down. They were from the level not on the same like last year, and I think they will increase their playing.
So the game we see this weekend is really fascinating because it's Munich, who really played a terrible first half against the Guards until the last 2 minutes, and then suddenly they get a big 90-yard touchdown, and the whole game turns around. And then in the second half, they were unstoppable. So I think that's a big game because I think the Dragons played a bad game, and they could have done better in that game against Raiders. So the Dragons need to win this week to keep the pace. But no, you're right. They've done better than people have expected.
So I think that this will be now the last question we're gonna talk about. If you look a little bit to your favorite, let's say, player in the ELF, is there one who you say this one has to be mentioned?
Oh, that's a good question. I hadn't really thought of that. Who's my favorite player? I'm trying to.
You can say two as well. You can also mention two. You can mention.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to think from last. I mean, certainly what we've seen. Well, I mean, I really, I mean, again, because we've got so many new players coming in this year, it's very interesting. I mean, certainly at the Guards, what's his name? They call him the Swiss Army knife. Silas Nisacha, is it the running back, the wide receiver?
I have a look.
He's been very impressive. And of course, at the Vikings, your new running back, he was very impressive. That first game I saw up in Berlin, the guy from the Helsinki Roosters. I think you were talking to him on this podcast, weren't you?
The guy from the Guards, I think, is Silas
Nasita. Is it Nasita?
Yeah, he has a Silas Nasita.
Yeah, number 7. So he's going to have to carry that team because they've lost their quarterback to injury, and a guy that I think is great is Jadrian Clark. Who we met at Cologne, because it's strange because he did a really nice job the first year, got Hamburg to the final, and then I don't understand why no team wanted him in year 2, and it was only when the Fire quarterback got injured that the Fire called him in, and he played so well because he played for the Vikings in years before. Did he, Clark?
No, I think he was. The story was that he should play for the Vikings, and then Corona came, and they had to block the contracts with the American players, US players, and I think he went then instead of that because the GFL was starting earlier than the Austrian Football League, and he went on to a German Football League team. I don't know. I really have to push it back now because I don't know exactly
No,
the
that
story.
sounds right. But yeah, because
But something
everything's
like that I have in mind because when we talk, I talked to children about 3 weeks or 4 weeks ago before the DLF started, and we were talking about the two, but I can't remember the details because I had so much talks after that, so I mixed it maybe up. Because Chris Helbig, the quarterback of the Vienna Vikings, were also for the Potsdam Royals. And the Potsdam Royals were the team of Chris Helbig, and Chris Helbig had also wanted to play for the Vikings in 2022, but the contract was he made it too late, so he joined the Potsdam Royals, as far as I know. So there are similar situations with Jadon and Chris. Okay, so we have a favorite player, maybe the running back of the Helvetic Guards, is it? So I'm really happy that you had time and you spent time with us on our talk. And I say thank you very much, Ian, and we wish you a nice travel to Barcelona.
Yes, yeah, and I hope to see you all in Vienna for the Raiders game. We still don't know which stadium, but just tell me and I'll be there.
I will be there if I'm not in Germany watching the LF outside of the borders of Austria. Yeah. So I'll also have some greets to your wife,
Thank you.
And I hope you have a nice evening. It's a Tuesday evening for you, a little bit earlier than me. And we see us at the Raiders game. So bye-bye and thank you very much. I'm going on in German now. Herzlichen Dank, liebe Zuschauer, dass ihr zugeschaut habt. Wir haben heute den Preston hier gehabt. Das ist die Ikone mit dem Kilt, den jeder Football-Fan in Österreich und auch in Deutschland kennt. War sehr schön. Und wir sehen uns die nächste Folge in einer Woche. Schaltet ein bei CTVAu.